Good morning, Riverbend. Good morning, Gloria from New York. Facebook, if you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, our website, we welcome you. If you're here in person, welcome. I'm glad you're here. I like to start off my day. It's not always this way. Today I didn't wake up with a heavy weight. But I know some of us here have. And I'm reminded that when we do this whole music, singing portion of a church service, we have an opportunity for it to be more than just entertainment. It's just okay if it's entertainment. It's not a bad thing. It's just, but it gives you a platform. That's why I'm here. Is I want to give you a platform. I want to give me a platform to connect with God the best way I can understand that, and let go. Let go of whatever I'm carrying, whatever I'm afraid of, whatever is giving me anxiety. Feel some joy, feel some peace. Because that's what he brings. So let's do that. Feel free to stand or sit or dance around. us lose our chains this moment. The things that we hold on to can just disappear. Bring your freedom. Come bring forgiveness. Come bring your peace. You're my redemption. Come bring your freedom. Come bring forgiveness. Come bring your peace. You're my redemption. You're my redemption. You're my redemption. You're my redemption. You are my chain loser. You are my chain loser. You are my chain loser. Soothe my chains. Soothe my chains. Soothe my I'm not much for changing, but this cannot stay the same. And I'm not much for listening, but I want to hear the words you have to say. 'Cause you're real. You are moving in this room now. And as I open up and let it go again, I can feel you drawing near and completing me. It's hard for me to be loving, but I feel empty when it's gone. So come complete me with your love, Lord. 'Cause you can heal the hardest hearts. Would you heal mine for a start? You were real.
Still in your presence, all the noise dies down. Lord, speak to me now. You have all my attention, so I will linger and listen. I can't miss a thing. Lord, I know I wants more of you. My heart wants something new, so I surrender all. All I want is to live within you, Lord, being done by who you are. My desire is to know you deeper. Lord, I will open up again, throw my fears into the wind. I'm desperate for your touch of heaven. house or in your car, or here in this big room that just feels empty sometimes. We cannot change. I keep hearing, I can't change my past. I can't do anything about my future, changing my future, but what I can do is I can be right here in this moment, right now. And if God is real, if we have a creator who loves us, whose very definition of personality is love, I want to just encourage you, compel you, challenge you, push into that. Ask God to help you feel that. Feel God around you. It's more than a belief. It's more than something written somewhere. It's more than an opinion. It's a reality that we all get to experience. And all we got to do is be willing. I'm reminding myself of that. So how I live for your moments, where I'm still in your presence, all the noise dies down. Lord, speak to me now. You have all my attention, and I will linger and listen. I can't miss a thing. Lord, I know my heart wants more of you. My heart wants something new, so I surrender all. undone by who you are. My desire is to know you deeper, Lord. I will open up again, throw my fears into the wind. I am desperate for your touch of heaven. Amen. You may be seated.
Thank you, guys. That was really amazing. Give them one more hand. That was incredible stuff. Hey, thank you for being here today, whether you're online with us watching or if you're here in the building. Thanks for being here and be a part of this. I don't know how it affected you, but last week we had snow. And for me, it was great. It was awesome. There was some refreshing part of the snow that came. But snow reminds me of snowboarding. It's something I love doing. And I had a memory last week, actually, of snowboarding when I would go snowboarding, go off jumps. And then sometimes I would land on my back and knock the wind out of me. I don't know if that's ever happened to you. If you've ever been in the place where you've gotten the wind knocked out of you. And inevitably, when you have that feeling, those moments, you feel like you're going to die. You don't have breath in you. It's hard. It's difficult. It's scary. Inevitably, whenever I have those moments, when the wind gets knocked out of me, it's usually someone around me who says, hey, you're going to be okay. Reaches a hand down to help me out, whether to knock the snow off me or the dirt or whatever else it is. And I know for many of you, 2020 feels like it was a punch in the gut, like the wind was knocked out of you. It was difficult. For me, for others, I know you feel that. And I hope that Riverbend in our community can be a place that says, here's a hand to you. Here's some community. And so whether you're watching us online or you're here, I want to encourage you to get connected to all that's going on at Riverbend. We have small groups, we have women's groups and men's groups, and all sorts of ways to connect. And so I'd encourage you to do that. Even though we're online and we're still together, and even though we're separate because of social distancing, we're still together, we're still a family. So if you're new here to Riverbend and you're just checking it out, you're just seeing us online, or you just showed up at the building today, I'd encourage you to get connected to what's going on at Riverbend. And part of this last year, I also want to just thank all of you for your faithfulness. It was a punch in the gut. It was a difficult time, but you know what? A lot of you said, hey, financially, we're going to step up. We're going to make sure we reach out a hand to make sure these things go. And I want to thank you for that. Many of you stepped up and said, we're going to serve. We're going to help. We're going to make things happen. And so just thank you from all of us here at Riverbend. Thank you for your faithfulness and what you've done, because God is still working through all those things. So this morning, if you're here in the building or if you're online, if you're here in the building, we have these boxes around for your offering. And if you're online, there's a place for you to donate and be a part of the ministry here at Riverbend. Again, thank you. Would you take some time, and we're just going to pray for that this morning. Would you join me? Lord, thank you so much for your faithfulness, for your love, that you continue to give us the safe place by your love and how you care for us. And so this morning, God, as we take our offering, I pray that you'd use this for your glory, for the things that you want to do. We thank you, God, in your name. Amen.
Happy New Year. Welcome to 2021. We're off to a rough start, wouldn't you say? Not exactly going the way we had hoped. It's pretty much a cluster so far. I'm not sure what we expected, going from the end of December to the beginning of January, that somehow everything would be all bright and shiny and new. And maybe you're like me and you're sitting here observing things and you're going, ooh, can we take a mulligan? Can we have a do-over of the do-over? Can we have a restart of a restart? Can we have a fresh start? Can we begin again? I'm not sure that I like the trajectory, the way things are going. I'm hopeful, but man, I was hoping for a clean slate. I was hoping for a new beginning. Well, if you're feeling that way, you're not alone. But I have good news today. I have some really good news today. That this is an opportunity, and the time is exactly right for a fresh start and a new beginning. We began the year a few weeks ago, the first Sunday of the year, with a conversation about how do we begin, and not just pick up where we left off. How do we begin again? How do we begin clean? How do we start with a clean slate? And I suggested that if we really want a fresh start, if we really want a brand new beginning, we have to go back to the very beginning, the beginning of all things. It's the very first words of the Bible in Genesis chapter 1, where God says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth and everything that exists. There was a beginning. And if we go back to that beginning, we find out that God believes in us. And as we make our way through the first couple of chapters of the book of Genesis, we're encouraged not just to believe that God believes in us, but we're also encouraged to believe that God calls us to believe in each other. But today we come to Genesis chapter 3. And this is where we look in the mirror and look at the person we see in the mirror and we say, I believe in you. And this is not just a power of positive thinking or a daily confirmation of our character or a daily affirmation. It's really a confrontation with our limitations. It is an honest evaluation of our own liabilities and frailties. I believe in you, even though you're not perfect. See, my prayer today is the same as it is every Sunday. That the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart would be pleasing in God's sight. That God would use his word, spoken by his servant and anointed by his Spirit, today especially, to remind us that we are perfectly flawed and that in that we have a purpose and we have the perfect opportunity to be the people who God has called us to be. It's an opportunity to believe. The first day I believed, and it was a transformational day. I was 18 years old. And I like to tell people that my life was changed the old-fashioned way. My life was changed in a moment when every head was bowed and every eye was closed. I raised my hand and I slipped out of the pew in the church that I was in, and I came to the front at the invitation of the message, and it was there that I prayed the sinner's prayer. And I committed my life to follow Jesus of Nazareth. And you know what? It stuck. It was over 40 years ago. And it changed my life. My life was transformed. It pivoted in a moment. And I began to see things and began to see the world and myself very differently. And my friends and my peers would ask me, Dave, what has happened to you? What's different? And I would explain this transforming faith that I had taken a hold of. And pretty soon people were asking me to share that faith with youth groups and with my peers. And over the next 20 years, I had hundreds of opportunities to teach and to share and to talk to my peers, to talk primarily to students and to teenagers, and to talk to them at camps and retreats and youth groups and youth events and roller skating parties and bowling parties and ski trips. And I really wasn't very good at it because I really didn't know what I was doing. I was more like Bill Cosby than Billy Graham, actually. But one of my favorite things to do was to speak to groups who were part of an organization called Young Life. Perhaps you've heard of Young Life. My younger brother, Peter, has worked for Young Life for over 30 years. He's a part of the team that is taking Young Life to Asia. And I spoke at Young Life retreats and at camps and at clubs regularly. And when you speak at Young Life a lot, there's a rhythm to the talks that you do in Young Life clubs or at Young Life camps. And your first talk is always, "Hi, I'm Dave, and I'm hilarious." And I was good at that. I could do the stand-up routine, and everybody would like me. But it was the second talk. The second talk was called the Sin Talk. And that was my jam. I was good at the sin talk. Now, I was good at the sin talk because I was familiar. I knew how to do it. I knew all about it. But I also knew that my peers, that those teenagers, that those young people, those adolescents in the audience were familiar with it too. They might not have called it sin. They might not have labeled it that way, but they were familiar with the effects of it, with the shame and the guilt and the inadequacy. They knew that they were comparing themselves to the person they thought they should be, or their parents wanted them to be, or comparing them to the more popular kids, or the smarter kids, or the prettier kids, or the faster, or the stronger, or the better kids. And I knew that everyone that I talked to was familiar with those feelings, and I knew that what they were familiar with is what the Bible calls sin. It wasn't until later when I was in graduate school that I actually had a class where we studied the theology of sin. It is called hamartiology. It's from the Greek word hamartia, which means to cross a line or to trespass or to create a debt. This is what hamartia meant, and it came to mean sin in theological language. And much of what I was taught about the character and the origin and the nature of sin was based on classic Protestant theology. Perhaps if you're familiar with Calvinism or with Reformed theology, that's the theology that I was taught. And it's some pretty brutal stuff. In 1536, John Calvin wrote the seminal work on what was then Reformed or Reformation theology. It's called Calvin's Institutes. He wrote it originally in Latin, and then it was translated into French, and it's still clunky when you read it in English. But this is what Calvin wrote 500 years ago about the nature of original sin. Calvin said original sin then may be defined a hereditary corruption and depravity of our nature, extending to all the parts of the soul, which first makes us obnoxious to the wrath of God, and then produces in us, which in Scripture are termed works of the flesh. For when it is said that the sin of Adam has made us obnoxious to the justice of God, the meaning is not that we, who are in ourselves innocent and blameless, are bearing his guilt, but since that by his transgression we are all placed under the curse, he is said to have brought us under his obligation. Through him, however, not only has punishment been derived, but pollution instilled, for which punishment is justly due. Hence, even infants bringing their condemnation with them from their mother's womb, suffer not only for another's, but for their own deficit. For although they have not yet produced the fruits of their own unrighteousness, they have the seed implanted in them. We are natural-born sinners, according to Calvin. And that theology, it didn't come out of thin air. It was based on the story that is recorded for us in Genesis chapter 3. Genesis chapter 3, particularly in the first 8 verses, is where the wheels come off. It's where everything goes wrong. It was the end of the beginning of the perfection of the human experience. It says in Genesis chapter 3 that there was a serpent, there was a snake, and that serpent was more deceptive and crafty than any other animal that God had created. And that serpent said to the woman in the garden something that seems benign. It's not necessarily untrue when you phrase it as a question, but the serpent said, "Did God really say to you that you may not eat from any of the trees in the garden?" And the woman answers the serpent with the truth correctly. She says, "No, that's not what God said. God said we can eat from any of the trees of the garden except for the one tree that is in the middle of the garden. That tree, we can't eat from it, and we can't even touch it, because if we touch it, we will surely die." The serpent responds to the woman's comment and says, "No, you won't die. You will not certainly die." I'll tell you why God is telling you that. Because God knows that if you eat from that tree, you will know everything. You will know good and evil. You will know what God knows, and you will be like God. That's why God doesn't want you to eat from that tree. And suddenly, that tree became beautiful. And the fruit of that tree looked delicious, and it was good for food, and it was desirable. And it says that the woman took the fruit of the tree, and she gave it to her husband, and she gave it to the man who was with her, and they ate of the fruit of the tree. And instantly they knew that they were naked. And they sewed together fig leaves to cover the first thing that they felt, which was shame and guilt. And it says that when God came into the garden in the cool of the day, because of their shame and their guilt, they hid among the trees of the garden. Someday, and I've been saying this for decades, I'm going to gather a group of people together who want to nerd out on Genesis 1 to 3. And we'll take hours and hours, and we'll study, and we'll talk about the nuances and the meanings and the significance and the theology of the first 3 chapters of the Bible, because it's almost impenetrable. We do a drive-by on Sunday morning, and we really don't understand, but we come away with a lot of questions. It just raises questions. Is this literal? Are Adam and Eve real people? Was the snake really a snake, or was it a serpent-like person? I mean, all of these questions are the questions that just instantly bombard us when we begin to study the first chapters of Genesis. But today, I want to ask the most dangerous question of all, the most difficult question that Genesis chapter 3 raises. Are you ready? The question is this: where the hell did that snake come from? How did the serpent get into the garden? How did that happen? Because if you're like me and you believe in a sovereign God who is perfect in righteousness, a God who knows everything, that means he's omniscient, a God who can do anything, that means he's omnipotent, and God who is everywhere, omnipresent, if God is a sovereign God, then why did he permit evil? You want to put the question more bluntly, did God cause evil? Is God the author of evil? Now, since Moses penned the story in Genesis chapter 3 for thousands of years, followers, Jewish rabbis, and Christian theologians have done exegetical backflips. They have jumped theological gymnastics worthy of an Olympic gold medal to try to explain how God was not the author of evil. And the most common explanation that I was taught was that evil originated in an angelic rebellion in the time before time. In between Genesis chapter 1, verse 1 and Genesis chapter 1, verse 2, there was a rebellion in heaven. Isaiah, in Isaiah chapter 14, records this rebellion as being led by an angel that he called the morning star. And this angel of light led a rebellion by saying, I will ascend into the heavens above God. I will establish my throne above the stars and the angels of God. And it's through this rebellion that evil entered into the universe. That's why Genesis chapter 1, verse 2 says the earth became formless and void. But you don't have to go to law school to realize that that argument doesn't hold water. Because if God is an omniscient and omnipresent and omnipotent sovereign God, and God knows everything and can do everything, and yet evil entered into the universe, it had to be with God's permission. In a court of law, if a person has the ability and the authority and the opportunity to stop something from happening that is evil, and they don't do it, you become an accessory to that crime. If not an enabler of that crime, if not an actual perpetrator of that crime. So what's the answer to the question? Did God author evil? I'm going to go off the reservation for a moment. I'm going to suggest that the answer to that question is woven into the rest of the story in Genesis chapter 3. Because as God is walking into the garden in the cool of the day, he's calling out, man, woman, Adam, Eve, where are you? And this is kind of comical. It's kind of like a parent playing hide and seek with a 2-year-old. You know exactly where the child is. You can hear them hiding behind the sofa or hiding under a blanket. And they think it's a hilarious event. This was not a hilarious event. And God was calling out, and Adam comes out. And Adam says, I heard you coming and I was afraid because we're naked. And God looks at Adam and God looks at the man and he says, who told you you were naked? You ate from the tree that I commanded you not to eat from. You ate what I told you not to eat. And then the blaming starts. And Adam says, it wasn't me, it was the woman. It was the woman that you gave me. And down through history, men have been blaming women for millennium. It was the woman that you gave me. She gave me the fruit, and I ate. And God turns to the woman and says, what did you do? And the woman joins in the blaming, and she says, it wasn't me, it was the serpent. It was the serpent that deceived me. Now, if you're at home right now and you're watching and you're enjoying your breakfast burrito, put it down. If you just went and got some coffee, just sit down. If your kids are running around and they're going kind of crazy right now, just calm them down or ask them to go into another room because I need you to pay attention to this. I need you to focus for just a minute. Wake up your husband if he's asleep on the couch next to you or in the pew. This happened because it had to happen. It was necessary. You see, originally, there was no evil. The world was one. The world was unified. Everything about the universe was good because everything about the universe was led by God. God was saying everything is good. And the universe said, yes, it is good. But in that moment, when human beings fell in love with what they know, the world became binary. The world went from being unified in the wisdom of God to being a world that was understood as cause and effect, as right and wrong, as truth and lies, as good and evil. You see, before that moment, the world was uniform. Everything was good because God said it was good. There were serpents there. The fruit of the tree was there. All of those things existed, but God said, this is all good. It was in that moment that the perception of human beings became binary. And the world went from yes and to either or. Now, if you're paying attention, You say, well, David, are you saying that there's no such thing as evil? That evil isn't really evil? No, I'm not saying that. Evil is evil. Pain is still pain. Suffering is still suffering. Tragedy is still tragedy. Loss is still loss. These are real things. But in that moment, the perception of those things changed. As a parent, you hear your child crying. And they're crying and they're uncomfortable because they're tired or they're hungry. And from that cry, the parent then gives the child rest or gives the child food. The child is uncomfortable because they have a soiled diaper. And the parent then responds to that cry and provides care. And the child learns about love. And so the pain produces blessing. As a parent, you ask your children when they're 3, 4, 5, 6 years old, make your bed, brush your teeth, eat your vegetables, stop hitting your sister. And the child may protest. The child may say, I don't want to eat my vegetables. I don't want to make my bed. I don't want to brush my teeth. I want to keep hitting my sister. But the parent knows that what I am telling you is for your benefit. It is for your good. That even though it feels to you like punishment, it's really blessing. We understand this. We understand this forensically. It's what I call the shadow view. When we look back on our life, we see those things, those tragedies and those struggles and those sufferings and those wounds and those injuries and those disappointments and those failures. And we see where our life went in a trajectory that it would not have gone because of those things. And if we look carefully enough, we see how our lives were transformed, how opportunities were presented, and how in many cases, not all, but in many cases, we say, I know why that happened. So I could meet you, or so I could be here, or so I could do this, or just so I would know that I could survive. This is tough. This is tough because it doesn't really answer the question of evil. It just answers the question of the meaning of evil. And this is exactly how Genesis 3 unfolds. You see, after God challenges the man and the woman for eating the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, there are 3 consequences. And in those consequences are 3 promises. The first consequences are on the serpent. He says to the serpent, you're going to crawl around on your belly for the rest of your existence, and you're going to eat your own dust, and you're going to be despised by all of the other animals that I have made. And not only that, but you are going to be the representation of pain and death, and that will stand in contrast to the woman who is the representation of life and beauty. And it says, I'll drive a wedge between you and the woman, but let me promise you this. The offspring of that woman, you will harm its heel, but there will be one who will crush your head. And there, thousands of years before the birth of Jesus of Nazareth, was the promise of a deliverer, the promise of a savior, the promise of a Messiah who would crush the serpent's head, who would take death and turn it into life, who would take pain and suffering and turn it into resurrection. The curse on the woman is obvious. The curse on the woman says, you will have pain in childbirth. You will go into labor, and delivering children will be excruciating. You know, I ask myself the question, why is it that any intelligent woman ever has more than one child? Were you just not paying attention the first time? I mean, were the drugs that terrific? I mean, every time I see a woman walking around 7 or 8 months pregnant, I'm amazed. I'm like, how are you even doing that? You have another human being inside of you. And you figure once you go through it, I've been there, done that, don't need that rodeo again. But I know some of you who have 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 children, you're just not paying attention. But it's a result of this moment. But what is the result of that pain? What is the byproduct of that discomfort? You know it. That's why you do it. Because you know you're bringing life and you're bringing beauty into the world. And it is a physical manifestation of what love looks like. The curse goes on to say that the woman will struggle in her relationship with men. No duh. And the reality is that the frustration of the epitome of beauty and grace and love and life-giving is always going to be subject to this voice of work and labor and struggle and futility, because that's the curse that falls on the men. It says, because you didn't think for yourself, because you blamed the woman, you will go and you will spend your life in toil. And you will cut the soil and you will plant the seed and you will cultivate the seed and you will harvest the seed. And all you will get are thorns and thistles. And more than that, you will not just get frustration, you will get futility. Because year after year, over and over and over, you'll put the seed in the ground and you'll cultivate the seed and you'll harvest the seed and you'll eat the seed. And then the next year you'll put the seed in the ground and you'll cultivate the seed and you'll harvest the seed and you'll eat the seed, and you'll do it over and over and over and over until the day that you die, and that will be your life. But 3 times in that curse, God says, you will eat. You will eat. You will eat. You will be fed by your labor. You will provide for others. You will find significance in the work of your hands. Even in the midst of the futility, there is significance. In the midst of the pain, there is beauty. In the midst of the rebellion, there is deliverance. I have a radical idea. That evil came into the garden because it had to. Because the man and the woman couldn't stay there. That wasn't their purpose. That wasn't their mission. Their purpose was to be agents of reconciliation. Their purpose was to be the hands and feet of God in the restoration of creation order, and they couldn't do it in the garden. They had to do it in the chaos of the world. And so it says that God sent them out, that Adam named the woman Eve because she would bring life to the world, and that they were banished from the garden to work in the chaos and the futility of life, in the shadow of death for the rest of their existence. And they could never return to this place where they would live without that specter over their heads. And God did it because it was necessary. Because the restoration of creation order is entrusted to us, and we are qualified to be the agents of restoration because we are first in line. Because we have experienced failure and pain and struggle and trauma and loss and grief. We are familiar with these things. And so as agents of redemption, we are the people who say, there is hope. I know that there is hope. And you can believe me because I am as you are. Because we are all in the same boat. Hi, my name is Dave. I'm a sinner. We are born that way. The study of martyrology gave me a headache when I was in graduate school. But really what gave me a headache was I was required in a class that I had on systematic theology to read a theology that was written by a man named Lewis Sperry Chafer in the middle of the 20th century. Lewis Sperry Chafer's systematic theology is 8 volumes. It's 3,000 pages. And I was required to read this for a class in graduate school. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're saying, Dave, did you actually read 3,000 pages? I would look at you and ask, what do you mean by read? But I was reading in the second volume this week. There's 150 pages in Schaeffer's theology on hamartiology. And listen to what he says. One of the most respected theologians of the 20th century says the presence of sin in the universe is due to the fact that God permits it. It must serve some justifiable purpose, attainable in no other way, else God would not have permitted it. No manifestation of sin is possible outside of the permissive will of God. He is himself ever free from the slightest complicity with the evil he permits. The divine purpose relative to sin has not been revealed, and, doubtless, the human mind could not comprehend all that is involved. Far be it from me, the idiot seminary student Dave, to disagree with the great theologian Louis Berry Schaeffer. But I do. I believe that he is right and he is wrong. God has permitted evil. Evil was necessary. And I know why. It was so that it would equip us to fulfill our calling and our mission and our purpose as agents of restoration, as agents of reconciliation, as models of redemption. And it's only the broken, it's only the flawed, it's only those who are familiar with failure who can say, I know what redemption means. That's what I was doing. All those years that I stood up in front of thousands of teenagers and adolescents and young people and talked to them about, hi, I'm Dave, I'm hilarious, and this is the reason that you're struggling with guilt and shame, because the third talk in the sequence of Young Life talks, after the hi, I'm Dave, I'm hilarious talk and the sin talk, the third talk was the Jesus talk. Was the salvation talk. It was the invitation talk. And it's the same invitation I'm giving you today. The invitation to believe. To believe that God believes in you. To believe that it is important to believe in others. And to believe that you can look in the mirror and see all of your flaws and see all of your inadequacies and be well aware of your failures and know that that qualifies you for an eternal and a divine purpose to make a difference in the world that we live in by being the voice and being the hands and the feet of redemption. It has been said that we have a choice. We can either love what we know or love what we don't know. And if we love what we know, then we think we know everything and all we understand is what we can know. But if we love what we don't know, we have to surrender ourselves to the idea that even though I may not understand everything, I may not know why, I'm in love with the idea that there is one who does. I don't know how you're experiencing these first few weeks of 2021. I mean, just when you thought, how much worse can it get? Well, there you go. You're just not being creative enough, apparently. Yeah, it can get more chaotic. It can get more confusing. It can be more frustrating. But it couldn't be better. It couldn't be better. Do you understand that we are living in a moment in history where the hope that we have is more essential than it has ever been? Where the voice of reconciliation, where the people of redemption are the people who are bringing hope in the midst of the chaos. It's our calling. It's what we were born to do. It is why we are here. It is why we walk on this planet. And when we look in the mirror and we say, I believe in you, it's not in spite of our flaws, it's because of them. And the mystery of God inviting us to be the participants with him in the restoration of creation order. So welcome to 2021. Welcome to your opportunity. Happy New Year.
Sometimes I feel perfect. Sometimes I am ashamed. Sometimes I am so grateful. Sometimes there's too much pain, but you turn far away. Sometimes I feel like laughing. Sometimes I am afraid, but you turn it all to beautiful. You turn transcends these times. Transcends these times. Help me see, so that I can Sing all that's happening. Sing God in it. You guys go with God, go in peace. We'll see y'all next Sunday. Thanks for coming. Thanks for tuning in online. May you feel Him in your week this week. 'Cause you turn it all to beautiful, and you turn it into beauty. Yeah, you turn it all to beautiful, and you do it all for me. Amen. You are my shepherd, I won't be wanting, I won't be wanting. Let me rest, fields of dreams. Ooh, I like that. quiet street. Even though I walk through the valley of death and dying, I will not fear, 'cause you are with me, you're always with me. Shepherd's staff comforts me. You are my feast in the presence of enemies. Surely goodness will follow me. Will follow me. Here we go. In the house of God forever. You are my shepherd, I won't be wanting, won't be wanting. You make me rest, fields of green, quiet streams, shepherd's staff